I'm back. One thing that you will also probably see are straw hats, navy hats, any kind of hat. Hats were really in the 80s, and I think they're back. And one that I remember seeing everywhere all the time was, you know, the little hats that boatmen used to wear, or I don't know, in the 19th century or something, like a long time ago. But, you know, they had like little round straw hats, and those I think were very popular back then, and I think I might have seen a few already popping up here and there. And navy hats for some reason, you know, navy caps, like as if you were like a captain of a vessel. Yeah, very strange. Another thing is big gold chunky jewelry. Mr. T like, you know, like lots of gold, lots of jewelry. You know, like bangles, but not just one, like lots of bangles, lots of like huge giant bangle earrings. Another thing that I remember was also wearing very big belts, you know, like this big, and they would be elastic behind and very chunky in the front, and in really you know, bright colors like fuchsia colors or something like that. Yeah, and rubber, pretty much everything. Yeah, things that are natural looking, like linen or cotton or matte colors, we're sort of not fashionable anymore, and I think we're moving towards that again. You know, like things that are patent leather or plastic covered leather or rubber or anything shiny is back in fashion, whereas everything that's matte and natural looking is not so much in fashion. And yeah, what else in terms of clothes? I think shoulder pads. Ugh. Yeah. I saw a really funny episode of Morse. It's the a British inspector who, you know, it's a whodunit sort of a series, and the first episode was in the heart of the 80s, and one woman had like shoulder pads. I swear, like she couldn't even pass the door, the doors. It was huge. They were like this. I hope they won't be quite as dramatic this time, but I think shoulder pads are back because I've seen them at mainstream stores already. So maybe hopefully they'll be smaller this time. Also, I'm pretty sure we'll have a lot of t-shirts with animals. Okay, so we've had animal print, and you're all aware of that, you know, leopard print and snake print and stuff like that. But I think more than that, we'll get also animals, full-blown animals, like a lion, a tiger, an owl, some, you know, like animals on t-shirts. Yucky. And last thing that we will probably see that will be back, I think, will be shapeless black and colored sneakers. You know, I don't know if you remember those. They were Reeboks, and they were basically up to the ankle and sort of squishy, and so your foot could actually be seen through the shoe because it was so shapeless. Yeah, I think they might be back. In terms of shoes, I think also bowling shoes and Converse shoes, and those are actually revivals from the 60s, because Converse All-Star shoes are actually 60s shoes, and you know, like wearing bowling shoes is also a trend from the 60s, and I think the tulip skirt that I talked about earlier was also a 60s trend. And the also what I'm wearing right now, headbands, scarves in the hair and stuff like that, is a 60s trend that made it to the 80s that is making it back into our era now. So anyway, yeah, things recycle. So if you want to be even more ahead of the trend, you should probably look into the 60s and copy them, you know. But that might be a little bit too much. Yeah, in terms of your body and what is going to be fashionable now, I've noticed that also being curvy and being skinny is also something that is cyclical. Also, it's really interesting to see how what is socially considered to be beautiful is going to be affected by the time period that we're in. So I don't know if you noticed, but basically in times of very good economic boom and stuff like that, you have a lot of tendency for women to become thinner. You know, and the thinner you are, the more elegant, because it denotes restraint in the face of plenty. So when there's plenty, basically you should be thin so that you can prove that you're elegant enough to refrain from, you know, like gorging yourself on all this wealth. Whereas when we're in a recession period, you will find that basically curves are back in style, because during a recession, what is fashionable is to be able to prove that you have enough to be curvy. And so this is something that I first read about and that I first got interested in when I read Naomi Klein's book called The Beauty Myth. And I think if you haven't read it, it's a really interesting read. And it's about how beauty is perceived through the ages, and how, you know, like being a beautiful woman changes, and what it means. And in particular, I think in the 80s, curves were really fashionable. For example, it was the start of Monica Bellucci, and by no means can she be considered, you know, a stick figure. Whereas in the 90s, it was Kate Moss, and Kate Moss is very thin because it was a boom area. But now that we're back in a recession area, then we will start to see that curves are more and more in fashion. And if you look at, I don't know, for example, Scarlett Johansson, she's very curvy, and she's fashionable right now. In the 60s, it was Marilyn Monroe, and she was not a stick figure either. So I think it's good for curvy girls that curves are back, and it's going to be fashionable to be curvy again. Also, if we look a little bit into entertainment, and that's the last of the things that I'm going to be talking about today, basically I think what is funny about this revival thing is that in the 80s we were fascinated by the 60s, and so we had movies like, for example, American Graffiti or Grease, or you had Dirty Dancing, which were all taking place in the 60s, and we were fascinated and we were trying to emulate what they did. And now you find that we're totally fascinated by the 80s. And so what we have as movies that are like starting to crop up are Starsky and Hutch and Miami Vice and the A-Team remake. And they're going to do you know, the series Sex and the City. They're going to be doing the beginning of it when they first arrived in New York in the 80s. And so it's going to be a big excuse to like put the costumes of the 80s back into the forefront. I think that's really interesting that in the entertainment industry, as well as everything else, we see this big revival of the 80s and this interest for what came before us. So anyway, I hope you found this interesting, and that maybe I've you know, like helped you get ahead of the trend, and so you can precede it. And if you find this a fun video and that you'd like me to make more like those, please let me comment in the section below, and I'll be sure to make some more of those videos. Thanks for watching. Bye!